Hi, Ari. Welcome back.
Hi, good to
We
be
are
back.
we are doing this after a long, long time, but the developments in Afghanistan have forced us to, from our busy schedules and all. All right. Quick question. What do you think of the situation in Afghanistan right now? It's very scary what all that is coming out.
It's a very infuriatingly complex and knotted and a complicated question actually to answer because Afghanistan. The moment you talk about Afghanistan, you have to go back and forth so many number of times that it becomes very difficult from where to start and where actually to stop. Because there is the temptation to start talking about Afghanistan right from the time the British tried thrice and failed. Then you had the Soviet invasion, then you had a post invasion, then you had the Civil War, which was post invasion. You suddenly had United States' renewed interest in Afghanistan when it came back and it reoccupied. But then a good place to start would probably be, when the post Civil War and how Taliban came into being.
Mm.
So what happened is that when Najib was left as the leader, Soviet Union collapsed soon after that, right? So
Mm.
Soviet Union collapsed soon after that, and that was like 1990, 1991. That was the time when United States suddenly lost interest, and they suddenly took off because Soviet Union had a kind of a defense treaty with Iraq, and so suddenly Gorbachev had started pulling out of all the treaties. So
Mm.
Iraq was there to fend for
Mm.
itself. United States, out of the three major gas producing, the hydrocarbon producing countries, Saudi Arab was it with United States. Iran was gone by that time then. So Iraq was the only one that was left. They got a chance to capture Iraq. They got a chance to needle Iraq basically. Because after that 1958 revolution, they couldn't do anything about Iraq. So they suddenly took off and they attacked Iraq. And they left Afghanistan the way Afghanistan was, with its mujahideens and with its ammunitions and with everything. And these people suddenly had nothing to do. Then Najib government was also very weak. That was the time when this Hikmatyar, his Hizbi Islam Hikmatyar, they were pushed to attack Jalalabad.
Mm.
They failed. Benazir Bhutto was furious. She sacked Hamid Gul. Okay, then again, a couple of months, I think, after that, Hikmatyar was again pushed to attack. This time they settled around in Kabul. This time, Hikmatyar was aided by Jalaluddin Haqqani and his network. So what happened is that when the dust settled, you had Ismail Khan at one end, you had Masood at the other end, and you had this part of east and south of Afghanistan that was pretty much into chaos. Okay, and then you had a government which settled on. It was basically a government of the warlords. So
Mm.
you had Hekmatyar who held a position, you had Masood who held a position, and they were fighting in between themselves, and there was corruptions, and there was lawlessness, and there was this allegiance of warlord, allegiance of the army towards their respective warlords and towards their respective tribes and ethnicities. So it was a kind of a mess. It was then in 1994 when Mullah Omar started with this bunch of 50 students. And then what happened was that Pakistan was, shuru mein Pakistan was pushing Hikmatyar, Gulbuddin Hikmatyar. Then when this guy started faltering, Pakistan started pushing Haqqani.
Okay.
Okay, and then वो footage लेकिन Hikmatyar खा के जा रहा था. And Haqqani was pretty pissed with that because when the second attack on Kabul happened, when Hikmatyar ka Hizb Islam Gulbuddin, when they settled around Kabul, it was the Haqqani network which had actually helped him. But ये तो अपना brand image अपना बना लिया Hikmatyar. So Haqqani was also pissed. So Pakistan के साथ Haqqani network का भी तब जो relationship था, that was not all hunky dory. That was the time when Mullah Omar came into the picture. And when Mullah Omar came into the picture, besides then by that time, the Hikmatyar, as I said, was a part of the government. And ISI needed somebody to do their bidding. So they put their entire weight behind Mullah Omar. Okay. So that is where probably the start of the Taliban, that is how Taliban started. And today Taliban is so damn strong. Today Taliban is so damn strong because after Taliban took over, you just look at this, you try to understand, try to get a sense of their power. 2004, they started showing signs of comeback the second time. Let's not talk about 96 now. Okay, let's talk about United States invades in 2002, in 2001 end, okay, after the Twin Tower.
Mm.
by the mid of 2002, they had they had
Yes.
declared that okay, we won the war, Taliban is fled, Taliban is gone.
Mm.
2003, they left again. They abandoned Afghanistan for the second time and again for Iraq. 90s when they abandoned for Iraq, Desert Storm. 2003 when they abandoned for Iraq, because this time then they had managed to orchestrate a counter-revolution in Iraq.
Right. Right.
The result of it, Saddam was gone now. Okay, so what happened is then when this guy is left for the second time, Taliban again started coming back. And there is a very interesting pattern in which Taliban came back. If we have the time, we'll discuss. Taliban started coming back that 2004, 2007, 8 May, Afghanistan government proposed the first, peace talk. Come to the table, let's talk. 2015 May, Pakistan first got them to the table, nothing happened. 2018 May, Ghani offered unconditional talk. March 2021 है. So from 2007-8 to 2021 is like what, 15 years?
Mm.
You have been trying to get this guys on the table to talk for 15 years and you have failed. And these guys are still there. And today they're taking over district after district. So what actually happened is Taliban is the concept of Taliban is actually a social revolution, the likes of which has never been properly witnessed in the contemporary world, contemporary history.
That's what I wanted to discuss. The concept of Taliban. We all know that they want a Sharia state, but it's a very unique one. We've seen ISIS, we've seen the rise of ISIS, the downfall of ISIS. It's still there. Taliban is still there.
Yeah.
What makes them so? What would you say? So concrete. Immovable.
ISIS is Bhare ka tattu bolte hain na.
Achha. Client.
Okay, ISIS is that. Taliban, as I said, Taliban has been a social revolution. Let me tell you why. When the Soviet Union attacked, when the Soviet Union walked in Afghanistan, they were a very powerful army. Okay. I mean, needless to say, they were a massive army, they were a very powerful army. But then they walked into a territory and they walked into a kind of warfare which they were not prepared for. It's a mountainous region.
Yes.
So their tanks won't climb mountains. Their trucks won't climb mountains. Their planes were too fast. They couldn't hover.
True.
They had an enemy which did not wear uniform. They didn't know who to shoot.
Right.
And it took them some time to settle down with this new kind of urban, rural, guerrilla warfare kind of a thing. By that time, a lot of damage was done. What was happening is the Afghan farmer was taking up the AK-47 and he was shooting at anything that looked like Soviet Union. In the second round, what the Soviet Union started doing was they started going into villages and they started blowing the villages. They even had toy mines that would name the kids. Okay, so it looked like a toy, the bacha would pick it up and instead of killing the kid, it would either blow his arm or his leg off. So it was very bad basically. So what they did was when they started moving into the villages, these villages started getting out. So all the women and all the children fled. And all the men of fighting age, they stayed back. So that was a point in time where there were about 7.5 to 8 million refugees. Okay, people were displaced all from Afghanistan. Some went to Iran, some went to Pakistan. Out of that 7.58 million refugees, you had 1/3 of them were kids. So about 2.5 billion, 3 billion of them were kids. These kids were holed up in the shelters in the refugee camps of Pakistan, mostly around the frontier area. Then these kids were kids actually 10, 12, probably less. And this is the 89, 90, 91 I'm talking about, right? These kids grew up. 2.5 million kids got pushed into Afghanistan when the Taliban was coming back the next time. Taliban were actually growing in power. This is 96, 97 में तो उतना नहीं था when Taliban came for the first time. But during the second time, 2004, 2005, when Taliban came to power, these kids are all grown up. These kids had all gone to the madrasas, Deobandi madrasas of Pakistan. These kids, a kid is growing. What does he have? He's growing up in a refugee camp. He doesn't have anything. The only place where there's a semblance of something, where there is bigger ideas and bigger ideals being discussed and all, is a madrasa. And anyways, Yaul Haq's idea was to Islamize the country. So that the fact that these kids would be moved to the madrasa for them for them to get indoctrinated so that they can join the forces of the Taliban or whoever, the Mujahideen or whoever, is only obvious choice. So this kids fresh out from the Deobandi madrasas, a Deobandi madrasa, a student is called a talib. You know that, right? So that is, so you had 2.53 million kids who were in their mid 20s then who had moved into Afghanistan, and then they settled down and then they multiplied and now they're staying in Afghanistan. So if somebody makes the mistake of thinking that Afghanistan, the Pashtuns are different from Taliban and only a fraction of Taliban, say only a fraction of the Pashtuns are Taliban, that's a big mistake. The ideology is pretty much spread out. They may not actively take up a gun and shoot at a moving target who they perceive to be an enemy. But the fact is that now we are standing at a point in time where you have about 2.53 million and even more actually from 2004 to 2007, 2021 has been another 15, 20 years. So you probably have another 2-3 million young guys who have grown up and who've been indoctrinated into the same mindset. So you're essentially looking at the population. Herat ko chhod dijiye, Kabul ko chhod dijiye, Mazar-e-Sharif ko chhod dijiye. The rest of Afghanistan is effectively looking at an indigenous population, which is essentially Taliban. So how can you move this? How can you fight them? And these are not ISIS ke jaisa. Paisa mila chala gaya. These are not like that.
Yet they have not been able to come to power. I mean, the ANA has pushed them and not let them come to power. Of course, US was there.
US presence was a major dampener actually for them. That is why they haven't managed. The way things are evident now, they're taking up district after district. And they would probably, what I think is they're trying to preempt the chances of a civil war. Though there is probably going to be a civil war, 90% chances of the civil war there after September. But what I think is the way they're taking up territories, the way they're at least trying to take up territories, is they're trying to eliminate the chances of a civil war across at the later stages. And so when they come to power, they would be in complete power so that there is no sharing of power, so to say. And even if there's sharing of power, they would have a lot of say in that government when eventually that happens. That is what their target is.
Where does India figure in this? What should India's plan be? Because Taliban is a reality. It's a reality. It's going to be a reality. They're going to form a government. And should India legitimize their government? Is India going to talk to them? Should.
Yes.
How do you talk with people who, I've just had the medical report of the girl, the diplomat's daughter who was kidnapped. She's been assaulted. She's been tied with her, her ankles and arms was swollen. And it's a lot of brutality. How do you talk with such a people? How do you think of them as a government?
Not much of an option.
There's
a difference between the Taliban that was there in the 90s vis-a-vis the Taliban that is there, that is going to be that we see now. Yes, there would be killing. Yes, there would be brutalities. Yes, there would be human rights violations. But then there are many governments which have been guilty of human rights violations. We still have managed to talk to them, still have engaged with them. Okay. Now, for the same reason, we should do that. And right now, as far as India is concerned, this is a complete state of flux. This is a complete state of chaos that is on. We should just wait and watch, and we should wait for things to settle down a bit. Because as of now, India, doesn't have any, apart from the hospitals and the schools and the parliament buildings and all that India have invested in. India doesn't have much going for it in Afghanistan. We've not had much going for us in Afghanistan in terms of business and commerce, in terms of routes to Central Asia, things like that. Okay. So waiting for another 6 months or 7 months or 8 months for things to settle down, or waiting for at least government to come to power, eventually whenever that happens, and then waiting for another 6-7 months to settle down, maintaining a neutrality is in our best interest, right? And then yes, you should try and talk to this. And I have a very strong feeling that it is not going to be like it was the last time, because there is as we keep chatting up in our WhatsApp groups, and you are also part of that group, there's a huge difference between a rebel group and when that rebel group forms a government.
True.
Even they understand that. कल को वो लोग के पास कुछ नहीं था. They only had a Pakistan to look up.
Hmm.
Today they have got access to a Khalilzad, to a USA, to a Qatar, to a Russia, to a China, to a India.
To a
They've met
Turkey,
Doval,
even Turkey.
Turkey.
Mhm.
They have met Jaishankar. They've had discussions. They've had chats with them. And the moment you form a legitimate or a government, let's say a government which is accepted. Last time they were accepted by 2-3 countries. Okay, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, UAE, and United States, of course, because of their hydrocarbon interest. But this time around, when you form a government, if you've got certain amount of more, this time around, China is okay with it, apparently. Russia is okay with it, apparently. Because Russia has got a bigger fear in terms of ISIS. Afghanistan, the Taliban is right now being viewed as one power which has got the capability to stop ISIS. So when you form a government which has got a green signal from the big powers, the regional power and the global powers, you derive a lot of legitimacy. So it is, how should I put it? It is only normal that you start behaving a little bit better.
Are you saying they're
And my
not going to
feeling
be?
is,
Are you saying there are not going to be any stadium executions?
no, they would be. Theirs is a Sharia state.
Hmm.
You don't mess with their domestic affairs.
Hmm.
You cannot mess in their domestic affairs. Okay. They see United States, when United States legitimized and thought Taliban to be the bona fide government when it happened back in the 1996, they thought Afghanistan is going to be another Saudi Arabia.
Hmm.
Okay. Wild, barbaric, brutal people, but they handle their things in the way they want, should look after our interest. That is what is probably going to happen. Okay. That is what is probably going to happen. Not going by what these people are saying, and we have reasons to believe because the other side of the balance is Pakistan, and that is a core part of that should be a core part of our discussion. Why is the Taliban going to behave a little bit better than the way it behaved the last time?
So the
And
way
it is only going to do that because of.
So the
Sorry.
way they behave during the Kandahar hijacking, we don't expect the
Yes.
same kind of attitude now. We are not going to expect. We shouldn't expect.
I don't. As of now, I don't. Okay.
Uh,
Because that the last
yeah.
time they were the proxies of Pakistan. This time around they are not. This time around they are not.
How do you see their equation with Pakistan? They're going to order it around, command it around.
Pakistan is going to have its hands full. Just give it 1 year. Just give it 1 year.
1 year.
Because there are a lot of things that actually had happened. Pakistan's main thing was strategic depth. Strategic depth चाहिए, strategic depth चाहिए. Strategic depth क्या होता है? Strategic depth is it's not something like I'm pushing 20,000 irregulars to Afghanistan and then I'm pulling it back. Strategic depth also involves moving your installations. Okay, your expensive installations, your expensive machineries, things that can be moved during the time of a war to maintain the efficacy of the war to a government, to another country, okay, where your enemy countries cannot fly planes and bomb them. That is strategic depth. So, which means for that you need to have a government-to-government treaty. So let's say Pakistan, let's assume Pakistan has got a strategic depth kind of a treaty with Afghanistan. What that means is that Afghanistan, for no rhyme or reason, is going to make an enemy out of India. Very few governments would want to do that. It's only an extremely desperate government like Pakistan would do when we talk about China. When China wants to sign a treaty like that with Pakistan, and only extremely desperate government would do that. The Taliban are not that desperate. Now, Pakistan's strategic depth का ये जो फंडा है ये भी ज़्यादा मतलब क्या बोले ज़्यादा पुराना नहीं है. They initially they were banking on Iran because if you remember the Daud Khan government of Afghanistan, they wanted to take back the Pashtun areas. They don't consider Durand line to be sacrosanct. Like the same way the British created trouble for us here with Jammu and Kashmir, they created the same trouble for Pakistan with Durand line. The Pashtuns, they don't consider Durand line to be their territory, to sacrosanct, political boundary. They want that Pashtun tribal area, and they are justified in doing that. So Daud Khan, he tried to attack Pakistan. There was a point in time Afghanistan tried to attack Pakistan, and They were pushed back because Pakistan army was good, and then Pakistan had tie-up with United States and all. So Pakistan, so at that point in time, Pakistan had a hostile government in Afghanistan. Pakistan had a hostile government in India. So Pakistan was open across two fronts, and Pakistan is a very narrow stretch of land. You know that. इसीलिए वो depth का वो लोग का है ना, they are very narrow.
You're very narrow. Yes.
Yeah. So Daud Khan attacked Pakistan, and they were pushed back, and so they knew that okay, this is not going to. Eventually, what happened is Daud Khan tried to quote NATO, and then PDPA came in, and then uske baad to wo, that PDPA broke, and then Daud Khan was gone, and then a different government came in. Then Brzezinski and all started arming the revolution, the warlords and all. Eventually, Soviet Union walked in. When this happened, and when at that time, then Ziaul Haq had by the time hanged Bhutto. And the United States was not talking to Ziaul Haq. They were very pissed with them because he had hanged them, and they were friendly with Bhutto. With Soviet Union walking in, it was Brzezinski who realized that sending arms and sending weapons to the warlords is ठीक है, वो चिल्लर है. We can set up an industry if we take Pakistan into our confidence, and that is where this renewed friendship with Pakistan happened. And that was a massive friendship. One point in time. आज के दिन में they are being treated like beggars. When it started, that was a massive friendship. I'll tell you, Charlie Wilson, the senator, Charlie Wilson was so good friend with Ziaul Haq that he came down all the way from United States, and he wanted to shoot a Russian helicopter. So he was given a stinger. They went to the war area, and they stored up a dust storm, which usually attracted the Soviet helicopters.
Yeah.
None of the helicopters came, but Ziaul Haq and Charlie Wilson went together on a helicopter shooting spree with Stinger missiles. They were that good friends. So from that point in time, they have from that kind of a relationship. They have two-time United States. They have played the Taliban. They have played every other person that is there. Okay. So they are going to have their hands full, and Taliban knows that. जब 2007-8 से लेके when these people were Hamid Karzai said Taliban से बात करो, Ashraf Ghani said Taliban से बात करो, Pakistan has been continuously hiding the Taliban. And you know how this talk started? Doha talk. किसी ने one of my friend was क्या बोल रहा था उसको, हंसी मजाक कर रहा था उसमें कि पाकिस्तान का प्रॉब्लम ये हो गया कि दलाल ने बायर और सेलर को दिला दिया अपना पैसा समझने से पहले. US getting United States and Taliban to war, but दलाल मांगता नहीं था. You can't blame Pakistan. दलाल मांग नहीं रहा था दोनों को मिलाने. Pakistan was hiding the Taliban for such a long time, but the Taliban guys reached out to the United States guys and said, "Boss, we need to talk. Let's sit down and talk. You guys have been asking us to sit on the table and to talk. Let's talk at Doha. Let's talk at our office." That is where all the Khalilzad and all these guys come into the picture. So now what has happened is that they couldn't get the strategic depth. आज तक treaty sign नहीं हुआ. They went on to time in United States. जो बोला उल्टा कि अच्छा कुछ दिन पहले शायद कुछ किसी का raid हुआ था. I'm forgetting it, and they found that Hafiz Saeed was आराम से sitting in his house. He was supposed to be in jail. Okay, so you found Osama bin Laden sitting there in Pakistan. Okay, so they two time the United States badly. They couldn't control their terrorists. They still cannot control their terrorists.
Which is probably why the Taj attack happened. Couldn't control them. Or do you think they had? No?
This is not a centralized unit. There are हजार splinter factions. इधर से ये आ रहा उधर. Look at Haqqani. That's a classical example. Jalaluddin Haqqani ka network was the first truly international jihadi network. Okay.
Yes.
While these guys were all local guys, the Burhanuddin Rabbani and the Hekmatyar and the Masood and all these guys, Jalaluddin Haqqani ke team mein recruit kaun tha pata hai? Abdullah Azam from Palestine, Osama bin Laden. They all came through Haqqani's network. Haqqani has quoted Pakistan. Haqqani has quoted Taliban. Haqqani is probably now quoting the ISIL, though there is no proof of it. But so you cannot control your terrorists. You cannot control your non-state actors. So that is, abhi Taliban government banayega, but there is no guarantee on the strategic depth.
Now you said that there are going to be killings. We need to accept that, expect that. What about the refugees? They're going to all spill
There
over
would
into Pakistan again.
there would be a massive refugee mix.
And in a
Okay,
roundabout way, they're also going to come to India.
uh, there would be refugee. Refugee screening is something which the country has to be responsible for. But there would be refugees that can India mein aana thoda sa mushkil hai, because if you have a robust screening process, then you can still screen refugees. Pakistan mein jahan tak aane ka sawal hai, there is no
Screening as
boundary.
such.
So they just walk in.
Walking.
They
They
just
just
walk
walk.
in. They stay for another 10, 15 years. They create another unit like Pakistan Taliban. They
Mm,
start attacking the army.
mm, mm.
So
And we have
so
the AP tragedy again. Yeah.
huh? So the godfather of Mujahideen, the godfather of Taliban, the godfather of all the terrorist unit that is there is now, it's not just a terrorist thing. It's now facing a economic crisis that is so big कि वो अभी macro level से micro level में आ गया है. There's energy shortage. There is power cuts for 18, 19, 20 hours,
Mm,
even in big cities.
mm,
The industry is sort of collapsed. The hospitals don't perform half the time. The schools are in deep shit. Then you have Baloch insurgency. Then you have the Northwest insurgency, the Pashtun insurgency. That is a big thing which is going to come back. You have urban chaos in Karachi. Okay. Then you have terrorist incidents on Hindus and Sikhs and Christians. You have sectarian violence on the Shias and the Ahmadiyas. Okay.
mm.
Interesting thing is, now somebody was asking that what happened? When did this downslide of Pakistan happen? Ahmed Rashid explains it very nicely. He says it doesn't happen during 71, it doesn't happen during 47, it happens during 1990, 1991, when the Soviet Union collapses,
Yes.
and when it's a unipolar world, and then when it's time for globalization,
Mm,
then even chota mota countries, forget India, forget Narasimha Rao cascading the economic liberalization of India and India's growth shooting through the roof and all those stuff. Even countries like Indonesia, countries like Malaysia, countries like even Thailand, they showed phenomenal growth
mm.
during that point in time. And what was Pakistan doing during 90s? Pakistan was fighting through wars. Pakistan was messing up with Jammu and Kashmir. 90s.
Mm.
Pakistan was messing up with Afghanistan.
Understand.
तब उसका
Right.
जनरल लोग सब रिपन्स विपन्स बांध के सब स्कोबुलेव and Zukov के बाद ही
I
अपना
know.
परवेश मुशर्रफ.
Yes.
They were so busy fighting wars. So what happens is all the industrial benefits, all the technological benefits, all the economic benefits, all the deals bypassed them, and they reached India, they reached Indonesia, they reached Malaysia. They were busy playing spy games and shit. This is what has happened to them. They have a I mean, Pakistan's problem is Pakistan Taliban, by the way. Pakistan Taliban is a very, very obscure entity. They say we are tied to the Taliban, the main Taliban. The main Taliban acknowledges that there are few guys who are there, here and there, and they are a part. They don't recognize them as Pakistan Taliban because unit ka naam denge to they have to legitimize these people. They are very smart. They don't do that. These guys are out in the loose. These guys are targeting Pakistan establishment, Pakistan army, Pakistan police, Pakistan का जो भी है जहाँ पे भी है. सर्वे आजम जो हुआ था.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
When the TTP cleansing happened, they killed a few thousand TTP. बीच में TTP का थोड़ा कम हो गया था because this was a Masood faction ना, Baitullah Masood का faction था. बीच में वो FM Mullah FM आ गया था. Mullah FM आ गया because he was from a different tribe and all. Some people left, but then again a Masood has taken over. Pakistan Taliban is regrouping. They have the money, they have the arms. Pakistan doesn't know anything about them. They have no idea how to control them. So you have an Afghan Taliban. So if you summarize, you have a Gulbuddin Hekmatyar ka Islami Gulbuddin, which is lying low in Afghanistan, which is the second largest party, third largest party in Afghanistan. Okay, they're lying low. And that man is, I think he's lost his efficacy by this time. You have a Haqqani who is a shady element. You don't know whether you can trust him. If you can trust him, how long you can trust him. You have a Taliban who is apparently not listening to you. They are on their own high. They're about to create a government. if not a coalition government, they're going to, I mean, if not a full-fledged government, they're going to be a part of a coalition government. There's no reason why they should listen to you, because they would soon have China, and they would soon have Russia, and they would soon have other countries trying to sign deals with them. वो trace minerals के लिए हो गया, कुछ भी के लिए हो. And you have a Pakistan Taliban which is hiding somewhere in the Pashtun areas, in the tribal frontiers along Durand line, and who is regularly targeting you. And this is only going to go up. And all this while you are in economic shit, you don't have anything going good for you. You had a brilliant relationship with the United States at one point in time. They were your very good friends. You have two-timed them out of, like, I don't know, you two-timed them to hell, so that they have even started treating you. Abhi Pakistan ne Doha mein usko laya na, Taliban ko. I mean, they want to take the credit. We brought Taliban to the negotiation table. FATF किया क्या? नहीं किया. IMF का sanction किया क्या? नहीं किया. So United States, they take a lot of time to learn, but eventually when they learn, one expects them to stick to the lessons that they have learned. And it looks like this time it is going to be like that. So if it is like that, then you could have Chinese pressure building up on Pakistan, because Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan has started attacking the Chinese installation. They started attacking the Chinese technicians. They started killing them.
Yes.
So more than, when you question was India ko kya karna hai, more than what India should do, more than what Iran should think, more than what Russia should think, I am more interested about what Pakistan is doing at this point in time.
It seems like possibly 50-50, right? Good times or bad times. Kind of good times for India, because if Pakistan gets embroiled into all of this, then it won't have time for India. But then bad times also, because then, Afghanistan suffers, and India has had to have this, settlement with Afghanistan. There was a comment the other day that had India at least done that Gwadar port ka and Chabar ka, and CPEC ka kar diya hota, so they would have had a direct route to India, to Afghanistan today for various purposes.
See,
that's what I didn't understand.
See, India's access to Central Asia. Okay. Yes, India's access to Central Asia can be through Chabahar.
Isn't it?
You can.
If they had, not been like a bicycle.
No, if India had that kind of a road that went through Afghanistan and all, there's no guarantee right now in this state of flux. And these people are trying to come to power. These people are bombing and killing people at random, that they are going to leave your road be. In fact, this road is a very interesting thing. When Russia came in, they built this huge ring road all over Afghanistan, from Kabul to Kandahar to Herat to Mazar-e-Sharif to Kabul. So this was the road that circled Afghanistan, and this road made everything possible. When Russia left and the United States came, Kabul ke bahar just 50 kilometers the road was paved, and the rest of the road was in ruins. So United States spent some $6 billion, or I don't know, $6.5 billion to build that entire road. And as long as they had that road, everything was under control. 2003, they upped and left. They went to invade Iraq because they had had enough of Afghanistan. Now, if you look at the road, the Taliban started, the comeback of Taliban, so to say, started around that road. They started off in Kandahar, they started blowing up the roads. And wherever the road went, Taliban spread. Okay. So the point that I was trying to make here is that if you have a road, there's no guarantee that that road is going to stay during these times. And if you were dependent on that road for your Central Asian trade, abhi agar agle 1-1.5 saal, 2 saal, 3 saal, if civil war persists, then you would have lost out on so much of business. So you have to consider that as well.
Well, let's hope for the best, Hari. Thank you so much for this. Do you want to sum it up?
There are, as I said, there are so many things to talk about Afghanistan that this is hardly
covers the.
Yeah.
There's an iceberg beneath it. But let's say we are watching ground developments which are changing, every 25 hours, every 24 hours, right? They're changing and changing.
Yes, it is changing, and there's a lot of people there. There's a lot of countries there that have got a lot of stakes there. I don't know if Afghanistan, if Taliban starts behaving well, then that Turkmen-Afghan pipeline might be a reality. Might be possible.
I hope it does.
Potential
I
goes
hope
down.
it does, because economically, they would start thinking of their interests and the interests of the people. But then,
So then there's
eventually,
Pakistan in between. The Afghan, the Tapi pipeline is supposed to come down. It's one part of it goes to Gwadar, the part of it comes to India, Brazil, Gujarat. So you have Pakistan. Okay. Pakistan is embroiled in too much of its own problem, and Pakistan would continue
yes,
being embroiled in too much of its own problem. As I said, give it 6 months to 1 year, you would see what kind of a problem faces this people.
it's
And
going to
then probably
implode.
they would.
It's going to implode.
It's going to be bad for them. It's going to be bad for them, and then it's going to be back to the drawing board once again. They would now try to create a different Trojan horse, and then they would try probably with a Afghani, and then they would create another Taliban, this time to disrupt the original Taliban there. All along, while the Taliban have a Trojan horse in the shape of TTP inside Pakistan.
Right.
Okay, so it's going to be quite interesting, geopolitically speaking, for the next few months at least.
I'm going to
But
hold you
yes,
to that.
humanitarian crisis,
Yes.
internal displacement, immigration, killings, that is going to come.
That is going to be. Okay. Thank you, Ari. Thank you so much for this.
Thank
I
you.
hope to do a continuation of this as well. Follow up. As I said, the ground situation keeps changing every day.
Yes, it keeps
So
changing.
let's do a follow up within a few days, right?
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.